This is a response to an article I felt was very preemptive and pretty presumptuous when it comes to Kanye West's recent Christianity movement. Let's all take a second and pour one out for the dead homie Jesus. Those of you who are Kanye fans are really feeling the effects of not getting an album that he claimed that he was going to release 3 days in a row. I feel bad for you. I also am a Kanye fan, but I'm one that's a little bit more objective, that just looks at his skill set, looks at what he's brought to the table and how he's changed music, as opposed to being really excited for whenever he releases new music. I do acknowledge that he is always going to be in my top 5. However, I can't necessarily say I'm excited when he does drop an album, especially knowing how his album releases generally go. This article says that there's a pseudo-religious inspiration for Kanye doing what he's doing, and because of that, there are people that were walking out, or there were people that were walking out of a Sunday service that he held in New York. Now, I wasn't in New York. I don't know if any of that's true, but I did have a lot of problems and issues with what was being stated in the article, and that's kind of what I'm going to be going over in this video. But one issue that I wanted to get to before we actually get into the whole article was people saying that Kanye West is making Christian music just because he says that he's no longer making secular music. Now, I do know that gospel is a branch off of Christian music, but for the most part, gospel is an infusion of blues, soul, jazz, and a cappella all mixed up into one to form gospel music, and it's had a lot of soul generally. It generally stems from urban environments, from the black community. It's a lot different than Christian rock music that, in my opinion, has been generally more favored and promoted throughout mainstream media for a very long time. Kanye has never made Christian rock music or Christian country music. He's always made gospel music. I say this because gospel music has always been a trend in hip-hop music. Regardless of whether or not the rappers who use it regularly or not want to admit it, a lot of the tropes that can be found in gospel music that are still traditionally black-rooted can be found in hip-hop music. Thomas A. Dorsey, the father of black gospel music, so to speak, was kind of the introduction of jazz and blues into what traditional gospel music was at the time. And that's what would end up being the foundation for gospel music years and years later. I say all that to say that Kanye making gospel isn't something that's new to him, because gospel music has always been influenced by black people, by black artists, by black musicians. He's just using something that he's always used and that hip-hop in itself has always used. Generally to be more introspective, generally to pass itself off as more spiritual. It's always been in hip-hop and rap music. So Kanye saying that he's no longer making secular music, while surprising to some, probably isn't surprising to most of his audience, because he's been infusing elements of music that exists in the non-secular lane for a very long time, since the start of his career. So for people that think this is going to be a gospel album, Chance the Rapper is another artist who's taken heavily from Kanye West. I doubt we'd ever have gotten a coloring book if it wasn't for a Kanye West. But no one seems to question Chance the Rapper's genuine interest in Christianity when he comes forth with an album that's a lot more gospel inspired. So I wonder why we have that same thought when it comes to Kanye, who's been making this type of music for a very long time. In New York, West's latest service missed the spiritual mark and instead gave the congregation a deeper look into how the music artist truly views himself. I never thought that when Kanye was doing all these Sunday services that he was supposed to be the spokesperson for Jesus or for God or any deity. I never thought that. I always thought from the beginning it would just be a gospel foundation with his experience layered on top of it. And he never claimed that he would, deliver any kind of message or any kind of church sermon. It's called a Sunday service. There are a few paragraphs in between this, but the most jarring part of this entire article is when we start getting the comparisons to plantations. She says instead, West's Sunday service had the feel of slaves worshiping on a southern plantation, praising select scripture that had been provided in order to keep them in line. Why? I don't know why people don't understand that religion in itself, Christianity in itself, when it came to slavery, was a method to keep people in line. And even without the idea of slavery, even up until this day, is still a doctrine to keep people in line. If you didn't have Kanye on the podium, it'd be another pastor that is preaching a similar message, telling people what to and not to do if they want to achieve salvation in the afterlife. These are all rules and guidelines that they'd be following, that they'd have to abide by if they wanted to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Why we're separating Kanye and making it seem like he's doing something unique when religion and Christianity has been doing that for centuries, I have no idea. Greater Allen Cathedral is a predominantly black church with roots in African American rights and equality in worship in society, a far cry from West's MAGA embrace. I see what this is about. Okay, I see what you're doing. I still don't get what that has to do with anything. Rather than uplifting that history, West's take on religion was very much based on loving and following Jesus blindly, as many slaves were taught to do to remain subservient and obedient to their masters. Now, I do understand why in the whole religious scheme of everything, a take like loving and following Jesus blindly would be pretty pseudo, nondescript, and barely giving any insight that would make people probably look at him and say, why am I wasting my time? You're not giving me anything new. You're not offering new perspectives. I'm glad that you're following God now, but I could be investing my time actually learning about him in other ways. So if he's doing that the entire time, I don't doubt that some people probably walked out. But the entirety of the place that Kanye is in was built off of slavery in itself. Why are we still pretending like, despite how much more influential and insightful a lot of these pastors and preachers are that belong to such a renowned church, such as the one mentioned, why are we acting like their faith doesn't stem from that same slavery that you're mentioning that Kanye is somehow emulating here? At the end of the day, the entirety of their faith, the entirety of that foundation, the entirety of that building that Kanye was quote-unquote preaching in would not exist if not for actual slaves being doctrined into that ideology. It came across like an antebellum preacher using his overseer to keep the rest of the slaves blindly obedient. Is he calling Kanye a house? I know for many it's going to offer liberation, it's going to offer explanation, it's going to offer a faith, it's going to offer some form of purpose, and I don't disagree with that. But to pretend like it doesn't do the exact same thing that you're accusing Kanye of is just disingenuous. Yes, he's taken a new approach with his supposed passion for Christianity, but attending one of his Sunday services, one can't help but notice how he's defied himself with these religious proceedings, fostering his own cult of personality. So many flocked to Greater Allen AME Cathedral with these Yeezys on, sang along ecstatically to every word, trailed his car until he left the church parking lot, and even followed their leader to the listening party for his once delayed again album. So if the point of the article is to somewhat show and slightly expose the clear disparity that the person is claiming that they see between people who actually know about the Christian faith and people who just want to go there to see Kanye, what is the big issue? At the end of the day, people who would only be there to see Kanye aren't getting themselves into something that they wouldn't have gotten themselves into without his influence, and people who actually know about it are steering clear of it. What really is the issue if that's what you're saying? Unless you're accusing fans of being fanatic, which is the literal definition. Of course they're going to follow his every move. Of course they're going to do whatever he says. Of course they're going to go where he says go. Whatever ideology he's trying to push and expose people to, of course people are going to flock to it. A lot of them. Not all of them, but a lot of them. Concept of Sunday service. Enlightening a younger generation through relatable music, a choir dressing to express themselves as individuals, and celebratory dancing. Seems inspiring if it wasn't a Kanye West experience. Any sense of self seems lost within Sunday service, particularly for African Americans. Instead of a form of spiritual arrival, it's more akin to a high concept musical performance masquerading as religious, and all in the name of profit. Because now we're going to pretend like the church, the establishment in the U.S. that is viewed as a charitable organization, that is viewed as a charity in itself in the government's eyes, that doesn't have to pay taxes, that encourages people to give money to the ministry, to the building, to the fund, all in the name of God's will in order to receive larger and more abundant blessings. You're going to tell me they haven't been doing anything for the name of profit. We have millionaires from people preaching, sowing seeds, donating to the church fund. Let's get that new wall up for the building. Pastor needs a new Bentley. Got cancer? Sow a seed. Feeling down? Sow a seed. Questions about your sexuality? Young man, come to the back room. I got something to show you. So Pastor C, you told me like if I donated $200, I'd be able to pay my rent this month. I still haven't been able to pay it. No, we don't do that. Can I get a refund though? I'm just saying we don't do that. Like we can't. But you said no. I donated to you. It's above me now. But I donated to God. You know, it's right. But I donated to you though. Right. I donated to you last month. What are you saying? What are you saying? Stupid on your part. I followed the rule, and I'm not hating on the church profit. I'm not hating on the church hustle. I think it's great. All right. But I don't understand how you logically demonize Kanye West for doing something that the church has been doing in every regard. And they've been making a much larger profit, and they've been doing it for way longer. I said this on Twitter, and I'll never not mean it. People are mad at Kanye West for, what, using religion to sell like pastors haven't been selling dreams for years, which they have been. If you're upset with Kanye because he didn't drop his album, you should also be upset with your pastor because that blessing that you've been waiting on hasn't come either. Relax. And that's not me telling you not to attend church anymore. That's not me telling you to stop believing in God. That's not what I'm saying. I still have my own spiritual beliefs, but I can't in my right mind demonize Kanye for what he's doing, what he's attempting to do, what he's trying to do, all while trying to put the church in itself on this moral high ground when they are the inspiration for a lot of what Kanye's doing right now. He's just following their blueprint, albeit to a much more transparent degree, because at least we know Kanye isn't out here touching children, and at least we know he's out here at least being open and expressive about the things that he's selling if he does have merchandise. I don't care. I'm not going to buy it, but I don't mind it. I had an issue with him talking about how slavery was a choice and how he was supporting MAGA but didn't actually have sufficient reasons for why he was supporting Donald Trump to that degree, other than, in my opinion, what was shock value. But I got a whole video on that was made last year. I actually, without tooting my own horn, without giving myself too much of a pat on the back, went back to that video and I was impressed with myself and my own description of what Kanye was doing at the time. Go watch it if you haven't already. But I guess what made me have more mercy or more, I guess, pity in my heart when it came to Kanye West and this whole Christian movement was just how last year he was talking about how you have to free yourself from your slave masters. 400 years of slavery sounds like a choice to me. All this other mumbo jumbo that he was talking about, especially during that TMZ video. And then I come out and see him doing and worshiping the same deity that he would have never had contact with had slavery not been a thing in the first place. So I still look at Kanye West as a victim. I can't just pull my pants down and take a crap on everything that he's doing right now. I just can't. He's a victim to the very thing that he said was a choice, and he doesn't realize that it's not as much of a choice as he seems to think it was. That being said, making the most or the best out of it, despite those harsh environments and conditions that we were in so long ago, I do understand how some could find somewhat admirable. At the end of the day, people are going to critique and review the relationship that Kanye is exposing between himself and his God. And I personally think that it's kind of jarring seeing people attack or critique the transparency that he's showing, I guess, when it comes to his relationship with his deity, because it's not something that any of us really have any insight into. I don't know Kanye's heart. I don't know his motivations. I know he hasn't dropped his album that he said that he was going to release 3 days in a row, but that's neither here nor there. I can say what it looks like. I can review it, I guess, but I'm not going to say or imply in any capacity that it's any worse than what I've seen from the Christian Catholic Church for however long it's been in existence. If you still feel comfortable giving T.D. Jakes and Joel Osteen and Creflo Dollar your money, then do you, boo-boo. But don't be mad when other people kind of follow the design and they're a little bit more open and honest about it. Just because you can see it easier with Kanye doesn't mean that it's less genuine or doesn't mean that it's worse. That's just where I'm at, you know. You let me know how you feel about Kanye, this whole Christian thing, where his album is, and how you feel about him making gospel-only music now. I'll see y'all next time. I'm out. Peace. I'll get rid of the mic soon, all right? Just leave me alone.